Okay, when I say the word Gnosticism, what pops into your head? Probably secret societies, dusty old scrolls, maybe the Da Vinci Code, right? We've basically been trained to see it as this weird, mystical footnote to history. But we're about to challenge that idea completely.
What if we've been reading it all wrong? I mean, really wrong. This is the question at the heart of our whole explainer today. What if Gnosticism was never actually a religion, but a lost cognitive science? An incredibly precise map of our own mental operating system.
Yeah, that's the default setting we all have, isn't it? The filter of robes and whispers. It makes us expect sermons and talk about salvation and heresy, but the material we're digging into today argues that the original language wasn't about faith at all. It was about function.
So to see this, we're going to need a new tool. The sources call it systems archaeology, and it's actually pretty simple. Think about it like this. Ancient alchemy used all this wild language, dragons, spirits, green lions, to describe very real chemical reactions. Eventually, we stripped away the dragons, and what do we get? Modern chemistry. So the question is, what happens if we do the exact same thing for Gnosticism?
Okay, so this brings us to the core principle for how we're going to decode these ancient texts. And it's not about finding loose metaphors. It's about finding a direct structural translation.
The key is this idea called recursive structural isomorphism. I know it sounds super dense, but stick with me, it's actually beautiful. Iso just means same, and morph means shape. It's a simple idea that reality loves to repeat a good pattern. You know, the spiral in a bathtub drain has the same mathematical shape as a hurricane or even a galaxy. It's the same architecture, just built from different materials.
And this right here is the crucial point. This isn't a poetic analogy. A whirlpool isn't like a galaxy. They are both expressions of the exact same underlying laws of physics. And the argument here is that the same thing is true for the patterns of our minds and the patterns in ancient myth. They share what's called an invariant topology.
So this is our Rosetta Stone. On the left, you've got the ancient symbolic terms. On the right, the modern mechanistic ones. So the ancient term nous, sometimes called the eye of the soul, well, it maps perfectly to what modern neuroscience calls the predictive model. And that infamous Demiurge, that's the ego model, you see? It's the same machine, just described in two different coordinate systems.
All right, so we've got our decoder ring. Let's put it to work. Let's use it to walk through the Gnostic map of how a conscious self, an I, actually develops, right from the ground up.
The story starts in the Pleroma. Now, it's often translated as divine fullness, which sounds nice and mystical, but structurally, it maps perfectly to the mind of a newborn infant. I mean, think about it. A baby has zero sense of self versus other. There's no subject/object split. It's just a state of pure, undivided awareness, a baseline coherence.
But, we can't stay in that state. To develop, the system needs functions. And in the Gnostic map, these are called the aeons. Now, let's be clear, these are not gods or angels. They are cognitive operators. Logos is the function of structuring reality, basically pattern recognition. Sophia is the function of assigning meaning and value. They're the software that lets a child start to build a world.
And this slide shows the crucial turning point. What happens when a system that has pattern recognition and self-reflection turns those tools inward to model itself? You get a recursive feedback loop. The system says, I am a thing. This is the structural birth of the Demiurge, what we call the ego. It's not a moral fall into sin, it's a necessary developmental milestone.
The sources have this incredible line to describe the core problem that comes next. The ego, the Demiurge. It's a user interface, a control simulation generated by the brain to help us survive. But it makes this one crucial error. It forgets it's a simulation. The dashboard thinks it's the entire car, completely unaware of the vast system, the Pleroma, that's actually running the whole show.
And this setup, well, it creates this fundamental tension deep within our own minds, a constant conflict between the forces that want us to grow and the forces that want to keep us safe.
This table lays out that conflict perfectly. On the left, you've got the eons. They are the architecture of becoming, the forces of curiosity, learning, expansion. They show up before the ego. And on the right, you have the Archons. They are the architecture of preservation. They emerge from the ego, and their only job is to defend it at all costs.
So, let's be really clear. The Archons are not external demons feeding on your fear. They are internal defense mechanisms. That voice of your inner critic telling you not to try something new because you might fail, that's an Archon. That sudden jolt of social anxiety, an Archon. They are stability engines, designed to police the boundaries of your ego and resist any change that feels threatening to that model of you.
Okay, so this is where the translation was truly lost. This incredibly precise diagnostic map of the psyche, well, it was hijacked. It was turned into something else entirely.
The sources call this process semantic capture. Later, more dualistic religious systems took the concept of the Demiurge, this limited blind processing unit, the ego, and they reprogrammed it. They ripped it out of its diagnostic context and they recoded it as a moral enemy, the devil. A tool for self-awareness became a weapon for social control.
And you see how this shift changes everything, right? The original Gnostic insight points to internal work. It says, hey, my ego is a limited model. I need to recognize its blindness and integrate it. But the later distortion, it creates external warfare. It says, the devil is an evil enemy out there and I must fight him. It completely replaces self-reflection with scapegoating. So, why does recovering this original map matter? Why should we care? Because it gives us a practical tool to understand our own minds, right here, right now.
And here it is, the whole shebang, the complete isometric map, our final translation. From the Pleroma as our baseline coherence, to the Demiurge as the ego, all the way to the Archons as our defense mechanisms. It's a user manual for the hardware and software of being human.
You know, the real power of this is that it heals that split we all feel between science and meaning. It shows they're not in conflict. Your anxiety isn't just a chemical imbalance, it's an archonic defense strategy. Your spiritual crisis isn't just a feeling, it's a neural reorganization. They are the same shape, just seen from different angles.
So what does this look like in real life? Okay, imagine you're stuck in traffic and someone cuts you off. You feel that hot surge of rage. That's an Archon firing. Then you hear the ego story. He disrespected me. Gnosis is that moment of clarity where you can see that reaction and realize, that is a mechanism running in me, but it is not me. And in that tiny moment of disidentification, you break the loop. You return to sanity. That's the practice.
And that leaves us with a final question to take with you. That constant narrator in your mind, the one that worries and judges and justifies and defends its identity no matter what. After everything we've looked at today, you really have to ask yourself, is that voice really you? Or is it the blind manager, the dashboard that thinks it's the car? And if that's the case, who or what is the one listening?